Hey friends! My name is Desiree, aka Mama Friendly. I do all sorts of videos on my channel, cooking videos, vlogs, hauls, Disney content, a little bit of everything. So if any of that sounds like fun to you, I hope you'll subscribe and join me on my YouTube adventure. You might hear some clicking in the background. My oven is currently preheating because today we are making a brand new to me recipe, which is always very exciting. I'm going to try my hand at making some baked apple cider donuts. As you can imagine, because it's my channel, these are going to be gluten and dairy free as well, and I am adapting them to be that way because the recipe I'm following is just a regular run-of-the-mill, like, normie recipe. So I'm going to be making my substitutions to make it safe for me to eat. Here comes kiddo blasting his iPad. Let's do our best to just focus right here and ignore that. So I'm going to jump right in and show you what I'm going to be using. I'm also going to tell you what the recipe actually calls for, so that if you're only gluten-free but not dairy-free, or only dairy-free but not gluten-free, or you just want to make the regular run-of-the-mill recipe, you can do so. But I'm going to show you the way I'm doing it. First of all, you require a 12 donut cavity pan. Mine has enough space for 9 donuts. I'm going to spray this with some avocado cooking spray. You could use Pam or whatever you have on hand. But I'm going to use this to bake my donuts. I'm also going to use a Ziploc that I'm going to cut the corner off of to pipe the batter in here. If you have a pastry bag, by all means. I might bake it in shifts so that I can make all 12 donuts, or maybe I'll just make like mini muffins or something out of the rest of the batter. But this is what I'm going to be using for sure, and I'll have this exact pan linked down below in the description box. As for the actual food type ingredients, I'm going to use 1 cup of apple cider, or in my case apple juice, and we're going to reduce that. We're also going to need 2 cups of all-purpose flour. If you're gluten-free like I am, I recommend you use the 1-to-1 by Bob's Red Mill. It's my favorite gluten-free flour, so that's what I'm going to be using. 2 cups of that. 1 teaspoon of baking powder, a teaspoon, not pictured, of kosher salt, half a teaspoon of ground nutmeg. We're going to use a 1/4 teaspoon of, ground ginger, and 3.5 teaspoons of ground cinnamon, but we're not going to use it all at once. We also need 3/4 cup of vegetable oil, a 1/2 cup of dark brown sugar. We're going to pack it into the cup. It's back here, you guys can't see it, but here it is. We also need 1 cup of granulated sugar, but again, we're not going to use it all at once. 1 large egg, and 6 tablespoons of butter melted. If you're not concerned about dairy, you can use regular butter. I want mine to be dairy-free, so I'm using Miyoko's plant-based butter. So again, we're going to measure out 6 tablespoons of this, and I'm just going to melt it in the microwave. So the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and spray my donut pan, just so that it's ready to go. And I'm going to set it aside so that it's not in my way. And again, this is what I'm using. This is what I use whenever I'm cooking or baking anything. But you can use whatever spray you have on hand. If you want to just grab the regular vegetable oil and use a paper towel to kind of grease this all up, whatever works for you. So I've got a saucepan out, and I could probably stand to use a smaller one, but that's fine. I'm gonna use what I've got. I'm pouring out 1 cup of my apple juice or apple cider. I'm going to put it into the saucepan, and I'm going to set this to medium heat. We're basically wanting this to come to a boil for about 10 to 15 minutes until the juice has been reduced from a full cup to a 1/2 cup. This is going to concentrate the flavor and also kind of thicken it a little bit so it doesn't water down our batter too much, but still gives us that concentrated apple flavor. It's already smelling very fragrant, very appley in here. While that is doing its thing, I'm going to get a medium bowl here, and I'm going to mix together my flour. So remember, that was 2 cups. If you're doing it by weight, and I almost always recommend that you do it by weight when you're baking, then what you want is 240 grams of flour. So that's 1 cup. Do as I say, not as I do. I don't know why I'm telling you, hey, I love measuring with the, I love using the weight when I can help it. And then instead of pulling out my scale, I'm still doing it just with the measuring cup. But there's my 2 cups of flour, my 1 teaspoon of baking powder, my teaspoon of salt, half teaspoon of nutmeg, which I keep losing. Here we go. Boop. I feel like everybody considers cinnamon like the autumnal spice. Like whenever you think of pumpkin spice type flavors, cinnamon is where your mind goes. But honestly, when you're thinking of autumnal flavors, the spice your brain is trying to pull up is probably actually nutmeg. Gonna put in 2 teaspoons of the cinnamon. So that's gonna be 4 of these little half teaspoon measures. And lastly, my 1/4 teaspoon of ginger. So I'm just gonna whisk all of this to combine. Get it nice and uniform. If you wanted to, you could sift all this, but I think we are okay here. Like that texture looks good, nothing looks clumpy. So if you want to be extra careful, you can take that step, but as you can see, it's not necessary. The juice has been on the heat for about 4.5 minutes, and we're only just now achieving boilage. So I'm going to watch it for about another 8 minutes or so and see where we're at. So now I'm going to set my medium bowl aside. I'm going to take a larger bowl, and in here I'm going to mix in my wet ingredients. Starting with our 3/4 cup of vegetable oil. So in that goes. Now the brown sugar I am going to go ahead and weigh, as well as the white sugar. Mostly because I don't want to keep dirtying measuring cups, to be honest. So it says that we need either 1/2 cup of packed dark brown sugar or 105 grams. So I'm going to go ahead and zero that out. And I'm going to go with my 105 grams of dark brown sugar. And we also need a 1/2 cup of the sugar. So in total, we're using 1 cup or 200 grams, meaning we're going to use 100 grams of regular white granulated sugar in this. Normally, I would suggest you measure into a separate vessel altogether, because if you pour in too much, there's really not a whole lot you can do to fix that. So again, do as I say, not as I do, because I'm really taking a risk here that's wholly unnecessary. But there's our 100 grams of white sugar. We're going to do away with our scale for now. We're going to whisk this until it combined. I'm gonna add in my egg and whisk until that's incorporated. And if you're wondering about the butter, like I just was, do not fret. It's coming, just not in the actual donut batter. We're going to use it later as part of our cinnamon sugar topping for our donuts. So, you did not make a mistake in leaving it out like I thought I just did. It turns out that's by design. I'm setting this aside for now until my apple cider is done reducing. And once it has reduced to that 1/2 cup-ish, I'm basically going by time and not by measurement, because I'm not going to take it out to measure it just to put it back on the heat if it turns out it's not like done enough. But once it's done-ish, I guess, use your judgment, I'm going to pour the apple cider in here along with our dry ingredients, mix everything up, and our donut batter is ready. It has now been 15 minutes since I started the heat. Not since it's been boiling, but since I started the heat. So I'm going to go ahead and stop that for now. I'm going to put my dry ingredients in first, because I want to provide sort of a buffer between the eggs that are in here and the very, very hot apple liquid that's about to join the party. So we're going to mix this. Probably have an easier time mixing it once everything's in here, but we're going to give it a bit of a head start as much as we're able. And now that my whisk is entirely gunked up, let's go ahead and add in our cider. Whee! This should make it a lot easier to combine now between the heat and the liquid. Yep, much better. This is obviously hot, so be careful where you're touching your bowl, especially if you're using a steel bowl like I am. But that is looking like a very thick batter. Not quite a dough. It's looser than a dough, but very thick. And I think that's probably about what you're looking for when you're making donuts. It smells incredible, by the way, in case you're curious. So now I'm going to gently, gingerly, without making a mess if I can help it, put all of this into my Ziploc. If you have a pastry bag or a piping bag, again, by all means. But this is what I'm working with. If you have one of those handy dandy little gadgets that kind of stand up in a V shape and make it easier for your Ziploc to kind of stand on its own accord, then by all means use that as well. I obviously don't have that, otherwise I'd have broken it out by now. But you know what, in case you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm going to find one for you and I'm going to put it in the description box so you don't have to go through as much hassle as I just did. We're going to bring back our pan, excuse me, saucepan, and I'm just going to use my little kitchen shears to cut a hole in the corner. I'm going to make it a pretty big hole because this doesn't have to be a super delicate process. I'm going to pipe in my batter until the donut holes are about, I don't know, let's say 3/4 of the way full. We don't want them super, super packed, but we don't want these to be like puny donuts either. So I think that's good. And like I said, I personally, whatever batter's left over, I'm probably going to make little like mini muffins out of it. But if you have a bigger donut pan, you can do all 12 donuts at once. If you have a smaller donut pan, or even the one I'm using, then you could just do them in shifts. Or you can make mini muffins like I am. I'm planning to cook everything at the same time. That may or may not be a mistake, seeing as the muffins are obviously going to be smaller than the donuts. But we're having fun, we're experimenting here. So we'll find out together how that goes. It doesn't even look like I'm going to have any batter left over, to be honest. I don't think we're going to get to experiment with the muffins. As it is, I'm struggling to get enough for all 9 donuts. I might only be making 8 donuts. I guess these are bigger than usual donut cavities. Yep. There went essentially all my batter. Like, I could squeeze more out of this, but not enough for a full other donut. So 8 donuts it is for us. Boop. So this is going to go into my oven, which I've had preheated this whole time to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. And they're going to bake until the tops are dry. So let's say 12 to 15 minutes. Then we're going to let them cool for 5 minutes when they come out before popping them out onto a wire rack to finish cooling off. And hopefully these funny little shapes, these little squiggles, kind of settle down on their own. Otherwise we're going to be looking at some funky looking donuts. But again, rustic, homemade, it'll be fine. So our donuts are done. One of them I straight up threw out because it felt way too raw to me. I probably could have kept baking it, but I just chalked it up to a loss. And this one fell apart when I dunked it in the cinnamon sugar. So, But the rest of them feel good structurally. So maybe I just need to be more mindful about overfilling the cavities. That makes sense to me because I did get way fewer donuts than I was supposed to. So I probably did overfill them. But we're going to go ahead and give one a taste test. This looks perfect, and actually you can see that's like a little smaller here. It's definitely one of the ones that I filled least, so that's probably what you want to do too. The inside looks perfect as well. That is really, really nice. Obviously, it's cinnamon sugar forward, but you can definitely taste the apple. Very much fall flavor. I love this. I'm actually curious. I think that the manner of dough, like the way that it turned out, this batter might even make a great like pancake recipe. Maybe with a little bit of almond milk in it to thin it out. But the flavor is bomb. And most of the donuts are quite pretty, so this would be nice for some sort of a get-together, maybe like a little morning coffee brunch, or even just a special weekend breakfast for your family. If you guys try this recipe for yourself, I would love for you to come on back and let me know how you like it. I really like it myself. I think I'm going to wait for them to cool down completely, wrap them each up in saran wrap, and stick them in the fridge. I'm sure they would also freeze really well. And if you're making them for a group, you won't even have to worry about leftovers. Thank you so much for being here and watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a big thumbs up. And I'd also love it if you would subscribe and click the notification bell so you don't miss any of my uploads. Thanks so much again for watching. Bye!